invite on stage is Ms. Nazish Sheikha. She's a senior research associate with the Pakistan Business Council. Ms. Sheikha is a serial activist for sustainable development, sustainable goals, climate change, and gender empowerment. Thank you, ma'am. My next guest is Dr. Akmal Siddique, who's a technical advisor with the Ministry of Food Security and Research. Prior to working for the government, Dr. Akmal has over 2 decades of experience with the Asian Development Bank, where he worked on a range of products, and he's considered an expert in agricultural practices. He holds a doctorate in agricultural economics from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Next guest who's come here all the way from Sri Lanka, Dr. Tushara Vikramachi. I hope I've gotten that correct. Who's a director at the Horticulture Crops Research and Development Institute in Sri Lanka. He brings over 3 decades of experience in agriculture and horticulture. He's an expert in plant virology and is a keen researcher on plant protection, especially on fruits and vegetables. We're awaiting Ms. Farzana Altaf. When she arrives, I will introduce her as well. So let's start the panel. My first question is to Ms. Nazish Sheikha. Just want to get your views on, in Pakistan, we've seen 75 years of agricultural practices. How do you foresee the next 25 years?
Can you hear me? I think the audience can. I'm representing the Pakistan Business Council. I just start off with a little background about my organization, and then I'll answer the questions. The Pakistan Business Council is a pan-industry advisory association, and what we do is we undertake research for improving the economy of Pakistan. So basically, we see what are the gaps and what is holding Pakistan's economy and the manufacturing and services sector behind. And based on that, and after consulting with our members, we move forward for advocating particular areas or policies. For particular policies. I head the Center of Excellence in Responsible Business there. So what we do at the center is we engage in discussions on the environment and gender and, specifically climate change and how that is impacting, how could working in these particular areas could improve the economy of Pakistan. In our discussions, very recently, we've embarked on a project on climate-related risks, and obviously, agribusinesses are very important in understanding what are the climate-related risks for businesses, because a lot of our large corporate sector rely on the agricultural sector in obviously their resources. So. In the last 75 years, we've seen some progress. Obviously, we have seen progress if there is a lot of products from the market in the agricultural business sector. But we've also seen that this progress needs to become faster. And because in many indicators, we are lagging behind even our regional regional in the region and also overall globally as well. And a lot of the reasons why we're lagging behind is because there's a need for training and development on better practices of farmers. And so in our studies at the Pakistan Business Council and SERB, we've managed to highlight case studies of where, improvements have been made, like in the chili supply chain, investing in better quality of seeds and investing in ensuring that the seeds don't come into contact with soil has reduced the aflatoxin levels. And that's basically done through training and development of the farmers. The other case study that we found, or which is very important, is the dairy development sector. Our case studies have found when we work with women and when women are engaged because they are the people who are basically raising the cattle and milking the cattle and training them on veterinary services, basic injections, and how to take care of them. That improves the productivity and the milk quality as well. So that's another case study that has come about. But now when we're looking at the next stage in the next 25 years, there's basically a need now to address the issues of climate change, water scarcity, and with climate change, we will get other issues like increased number of pests, and so there's a greater need to build farmer resilience around those. So in the next 25 years, I do see a focus on that, but obviously it will have to be a very concentrated focus as well. I'd like to leave it at that. I do want to leave it with the question, understanding that climate-related risks have become very important for the corporate sector to report on. And understanding these risks will need to go down to the agribusinesses. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Ms. Nazish. So I'm going to throw it to the government now. So Dr. Akmal, how prepared is Pakistan in agriculture when it comes to climate change? So what does the government need to do? And how prepared are we to adapt new climatic practices that will help increase agricultural productivity in this country?
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. If you are curious whether Pakistan is ready or Pakistan's agriculture is ready for climate change, the answer is a very clear no, unfortunately. But there are technologies in the pipeline. There are some bright spots in Pakistan's agriculture, which make some part of the production system a bit more resilient. But overall, the sector is really not ready for facing the challenges of the climate change. That's just the sad reality. And let me explain what challenges we are facing already and we will face, and how we are not ready to face those challenges. There are two types of impacts Pakistan will have on climate change, impacts on agriculture. One we all saw last year, what happened in Sindh and other parts of the country, massive flooding. So unfortunately, there is not much you can do to fight against that kind of event. It was a massive event. And any type of cropping system, even if they are climate resilient, will be very hard to sustain the damage. But mostly, we are not going to see, hopefully, we're not going to see that level of damage to agriculture very often. Those are hopefully going to be the rare events. But what we have seen over the last 3 to 4 years are the typical impacts on agriculture. For instance, 3 years ago, we had heat wave in March, rather in February, starting in February and March. That's the time when our wheat starts to mature, and then the grain formation takes place, and it doesn't require that level of high temperature. But all of a sudden, we had a heat wave, not only in Pakistan, but northern India. And both countries suffered significant damage to the wheat crop. So that was very unusual. Similarly, coming to flooding, if this flood were not as damning and extensive, we have some varieties, or more are in the pipeline, where crops will withstand maybe 2 weeks of flooding. Similarly, if there is a dry spell, crops can withstand 2 to 3 weeks of very high drought-like situation. So there are two takeaways. One, we don't yet have the varieties in the hands of the farmer. If you talk to our scientists, they keep promising us, oh, we are working on climate resilient varieties, which will withstand 2 to 3 weeks of drought, 2 to 3 weeks of submergence. But farmers don't yet have access to those varieties. But if scientists promise us, hopefully in the next few years, we will have those. So that's our strategy to fight against the climate change. But again, having technology is one thing, as we have learned, but getting that technology in the hands of the farmer is entirely different ball game. And that's where it worries me that even if you have technologies, how we will get out to the farmer. And my last point during this particular segment of the discussion is that our agriculture, especially our farming, is not profitable. So if farming is not profitable, private investment is scant. Even farmers themselves don't invest in better technologies. So therefore, what worries me is so long as farming remains on average not quite profitable. When I say profitable, it should be as profitable as any non-farm business, because people, even farmers, are entrepreneurs. They will only invest in better technologies, more efficient farming practices, which require capital investment in machinery, in better seeds, when they find that investment will give the return. Otherwise, they will take that savings out of farming and into non-farm areas. So my work with the ministry is to convince them how to make farming more profitable, or at least as profitable as non-farming sectors, which is not the case right now. So that's our bigger challenge than bringing technologies for climate resilience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Akmal. So Dr. Teixeira, just going to get your expert views on, you're an expert on plant virology and the pests that are associated with that. What have you observed in terms of the changing climate and the emergence of new pests, or how are you fighting the emergence of new disease due to climate change in plants, and what can we do to become more climate resilient in food security, with the advent of these new pests appearing?
Yeah, good morning. It is actually a very good question, because with the climate change scenario, we face different new pest diseases emerging, not only from Sri Lanka, but over the world. Because now the world is a global village. Then we have a multinational trade. Then we have more chance of introduction of the new pest into the country, which have been emerging in some other country. We got the fall armyworm. That is a pandemic situation. Fall armyworm, it is entirely spread over the country. The maize cultivation devastated. Then it will affect not only maize, but also trade of most of the product. The phytosanitary condition were more strong because of because of this pest from other countries. Therefore, that is the pest which is emerged from the Africa. They are coming from the Pakistan, India to Sri Lanka. This type of the incidents are more prevalent with this climate change scenario. Therefore, we have to have a proper plan how to address this type of problems, because as South Asian countries, we tend to do something once the problems in our hand, but we don't have a proper plan. Then we should have a continuous and very sustainable plan for research and development, but it is a lacking most of the South Asian countries, but Pakistan is in good position. But with regard to Sri Lanka, we are invest minimum on research and development. That should not be happen because we have to face much more problems in future than today. Therefore, we must know we should influence the future problems by now, and those problems will be coming in more strong way. Therefore, that is our research development, and all our plans should be in a very proper way, and also policies must be there because farmers are the person, they want voluntarily, they do not do many things without proper, very strong awareness program. But in our most of the Asian countries, awareness, we are pumping more money for the awareness, but we don't feel that much of the effectiveness of such awareness program. Therefore, it has to come as the regulations, policy from the government side. Therefore, but whenever we are going for the policy are formulated by multiple organizations. That is also the drawback in the South Asia. For policy formulation, we have many organizations, but the connectivity, coordination among these organization entities are very poor. Then we will be getting multiple policies for climate change scenario. But this, if the policy implementation also taken up by multiple agencies, then ultimately the farmers are in a dilemma, what to accept, what not to accept. These things are in a very common in the South Asian region. Therefore, we have to have, because of for international donors, international agencies should come up with we have to better harmonization of our local regulation policies with the international treaties, international rules, and the regulation. Then only we can have a very strong program to mitigate and adapt this climate things. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tushera. Gives me great pleasure to introduce Ms. Farzana Altaf, who is the Director General at the Environmental Protection Agency. And she's been at the forefront of government's efforts to create smart climate food systems. She's worked on multiple projects, and most recently, if I can add from my own personal experience, she's been instrumental in creating a regulatory framework for genetically modified grains. Without her expert advice, we would be no closer to solving this issue. She's a keen promoter of research, and this has led to innovation and sustainable development in the government. Ms. Farzana, we've done one round of questions and you're at the right time. So my first question to you, how can climate smart food systems contribute to global sustainability goals and mitigate climate change?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and very good morning to everyone. First of all, before talking about the smart agriculture concept, I would like to ask a question. Still, do we have understand what is a smart agriculture meant in Pakistan? And our actual producer is how much aware about the smart agriculture concept? That is a main question to everyone. Like, sorry to say, sitting over here in this beautiful environment with a beautiful gathering, when we are talking about the smart agriculture, what our farmer is exactly doing in the field, and how much exactly those producers are aware what we are talking here today, and how much we have played as a policymaker, as a lawmaker, and as a guidelines maker, have we played our role to make them aware about the need of the smart agriculture and demand of the production in the present context of the climate change and what is happening with the food security and food safety in the country. So my prime question and concern about this is to create exact awareness. When we say smart agriculture, we need to target our exact producer. Even consumer is at the end of the pipeline, and they are just looking for the production. But producer, then transporter, provider, trader, they all need to be integrated into this system. When I was looking this panel of discussion today, and with the context of the subject, I was trying to find the consumer. What consumer is asking to us and what challenges they are facing in this time when in the month of the end of the November, we are sitting here and what temperature we are facing. What is happening right now with the crop being cultivated in the entire country, right from the Sindh till Gilgit-Baltistan. We are not having that temperature which was suitable decade back for the agriculture. And right now, how much production we have made in terms of the seed availability to the community, to the farmers who has to grow, who has to sow these seeds. Like if I quote the example of the today season, when maize is being sown or wheat is being sown in certain areas, what is the temperature? And how much guidance we are providing to them. Then I will discuss in the further discussion. But still, when we talk, we have developed some artificial intelligence, latest IT. Is our farmer and small landholders are capable of understanding those app guidance? Because we heard a lot about the, although my fellow from the National Food Security can answer about that, but how much awareness we are giving them through interaction. Because every farmer is not well educated to understand the artificial intelligence and the use of the apps to have the forecast of the weather and rain. And how much rain we had in this month of the November, which is really required for one of the major crop of the Pakistan, which is the wheat. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for your great remarks. So, Ms. Nazish, I want to touch upon something you spoke about in agriculture and women. And there's a whole debate around how women are disproportionately affected by climate change. So I think your views on agriculture, women, and climate change would be very important over here to understand how, and I think this is a common theme amongst all the speakers over here today who've spoken about climate change and weather patterns and that affecting production in Pakistan. How does that disproportionately affect women who are in farming? And you can take the example of dairy if you want, or any other industry.
Okay, thank you for this question. This question is quite dear to my heart, and we've done a lot of research on it as well. In the sense that I'll start with this discussion on dairy farmers, but I'll move on to other areas as well. So when we look at women, women generally in the rural areas are in charge of the home, the housework, and that housework also includes looking after the cattle and milking them, and in general, they're also in charge of their household income as well. So these two things basically go together in the sense that if you empower women and to earn more money through within their household, that income will directly go into the income of the household. And that's where we've seen a great change. And when that happens, we did a particular study with Friesland and Campina, and it was an impact study. And basically we looked at the women dairy farmers that they have trained on this. And what we found was that after this increase in income, there was a greater direction towards improving their children's education. There was better health, And, you know, they were able to think about the future as well. And we've seen this in many studies where, you know, we've seen it with the Kush Foundation as well. When they invest in, or when they give out microloans to women, they generally see that the microloans are paid back, and the women end up investing as entrepreneurs. And we've had a discussion that farmers are also entrepreneurs in, you know, improving their practices and systems. And when we're talking about education, this training and development is when a male farmer goes out to the field, he's already open to various ideas. But this idea of when we go to the household, to the women, is very new to them. So they're more interested in picking up things and moving in the right direction. So in that sense, women, in this way, there is a way that we can reduce the impact of climate change on women and make them more resilient within their households. And whilst we're doing this, whilst this training has happened, there could be other trainings as well, how to deal with adverse weather, you know, how to, you know, look after their children if there are, you know, floods. So, you know, that area can also be explored as well. So it won't be just one area of improving farming practices, it will be improving the entire lifestyle as well. So that's one thing. The other thing is, obviously, women are, when we talk about malnutrition in Pakistan, women are the most impacted by malnutrition. So improving farming practices and that will lead to better health indicators, and improving and focusing women will lead to, I think, a reduction in malnutrition as well. So these are things that I can think of on the top of my head.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nazish. Dr. Akmal, I'll come back to you. You know, you spoke a lot about technology and farmers in Pakistan. And one of the themes that you mentioned was how the farmer is not prepared and farming is not profitable in Pakistan. I just want to ask you, in terms of adaptability of technology, how can we fast track that for Pakistan, looking at the situation that we're in and the level of education that the farmers have, and how can this adaptability be fast-paced?
As I said in my opening comments, that first and foremost, the government really has to make sure that farming is profitable. And I set the rule, this profitability should be as or comparable to non-farm sectors. And I'll expand on it a little bit. But let me also make a very basic sort of statement that nowhere in the world, this is what I've been saying to the government for the last 2.5 years, I've had this position, that modern agriculture is not a cup of tea for any farmer anywhere. Chris, our colleague, he said he just came back from Des Moines, Iowa, the heartland of US agriculture. Even in the US, and he comes from USDA, one of the largest departments in the US, perhaps larger than the State Department. Modern agriculture requires the government policy, the government strategy, the government's investment in research and development. Even as we speak, more than 50% of the research and development, even in the US, is supported by the public sector. So let me give you an example. Dr. Tushara was saying how scant the investment on agricultural R&D is in Sri Lanka. Let me give you an example with numbers. The rule of thumb is you, as a government, invest minimum 0.2% of your agricultural GDP in agricultural research and development. If you use that rule of thumb and look at Pakistan's investment over the last 25, 30 years, we have barely touched that threshold. And compare that with India, they have spent 0.4%. China has spent 0.6%. So that's a level of commitment the government has to. It's a classic public good. Private sector would not invest in agriculture R&D, not in the US, not in Japan, not in India, not in China, and not in South Asia. Our successive governments have failed to allocate adequate budgetary resources for research and development. And unfortunately, the money you spend today is going to show the outcome 5 to 10 years down the road. So we really are in a very bad situation. We have to make up a lot of lost time. But I don't want to leave you with all the bad news. We haven't done that, but there are some steps the government still can take, both at the provincial level, especially and at the federal level, where farmers can be provided technologies and knowledge to adopt those practices. For instance, we have tried to bring in precision planters. Let me give you one example. Even today, 90% of the farmers in Pakistan, they sow seed, wheat seed, which is our largest crop. We grow it on 40% of the area, on 23 million acres. And they just take a bag full of seed and just throw it. We call it broadcasting. That's how the human race started growing wheat 10,000 years ago. We still sow seed the same way. But there is a precision planter. If we import, it's very expensive. So I've been pleading with the government, we should reverse engineer and try to manufacture with the private sector locally. So we were successful in making some of these precision planters and field tested, and they take only 8 kilograms per acre rather than 50 kilograms acre farmers use. Their germination rate is 90% compared to farmers' 70%. Similarly, we want farmers to grow crops on raised beds, not on flat fields. Growing on raised beds saves 50% of the water and 70% of the fertilizer. So what I'm saying is there are simple, straightforward technologies, but farmers cannot adopt those technologies on their own. And Pakistan's private sector will not provide for those. So the governments, both at the provincial and the federal level, have to invest and pay very close attention to come up with those packages, technology packages, and then take them to farmers. And I'm afraid we are not making very good progress. Perhaps we are waiting for a crisis, much worse crisis than we already have, to really take those steps to adopt. So that would make the climate resilient agricultural system much better off. I earlier said the next step is to have varieties which are drought resistant or can submerge for 2 weeks without much damage. Those varieties in the pipeline. But these technologies, plus making the agriculture more profitable or consistently profitable. When I say profitable, please don't misunderstand that farming is always unprofitable. That's not the case. What happens is you make money on one crop, one season, and then you lose money on the next crop in the next season. But then you make money again. That's why farmers sort of stay in farming. What government needs to make sure through its policies is, price policies, is that the farming becomes consistently profitable. So these are the challenges. But I want to leave you with the good news that what is going to take to make Pakistan's agriculture climate smart is not complex. It's not going to cost billions of dollars. It's not going to cost huge effort to get farmers to adopt those technologies. All it's going to take is for a government to be focused, pay attention, and get on with it. And I think we will be we will have a climate smart agriculture. We will be ready. But unfortunately, we are not there yet.
Thank you, Dr. Akmal. Dr. Teixeira, I just want to touch upon something you had spoken about phytosanitary and collaboration on phytosanitary. I know recently Pakistan has become a signatory to the e-phytosanitary regulations, and now we are part of the 88 countries that are going to be able to exchange information on that. So in this changing world dynamic, how important is collaboration on phytosanitary issues, and how can we address future challenges that might come due to these phytosanitary? And if you could also touch a little bit upon fumigation practices as well, and how can they help in mitigating these risks?
Yes, actually, now we are different countries. We are expert in production of different food material, feed material, but we have to exchange this through the cross-border trade. Therefore, phytosanitary measures come into play picture, because now there are on diseases, on pest, on biological constraint in a country that should not be transferred introduction into the other country. It will be regulated through this type of phytosanitary laws and regulations. But thing is, we have to look back and see whether our phytosanitary in South Asia is strong enough to protect our countries through this type of the cross-border pest disease invasion. Because we got the fall armyworm from India. India got the banana bunchita from Sri Lanka. Similarly, many cross-border pests are transmitting here and there, giving much more challenge to the international trade. Then ultimately, the region as a whole in a danger situation. Therefore, as far as we are invest on climate change, then climate change may have impact on the emergence of this type of new pest species. Therefore, we should not forget about this type of the cross-border trade and phytosanitary aspect. The region has taken new initiatives for phytosanitary. Then on the other hand, this type of phytosanitary regulation should not be served as the technical barriers for the trade, because we have to do easy trade with the European countries, but even our neighbors, it is very difficult for us to do the trade. That is, we have to harmonize ourselves as a region to make getting the benefit of this food and feed material trade within the region. Then that we have to openly talk about. Then whenever we want to give exemption for something, because we have a common pest, these common pests are not considered as the quarantine pests. Therefore, we should not give any kind of rules regulation for the sake of giving rules and regulation. We have to have exempts many things, but as a region, then it will be good for the region trade as well as the food security of the region, because even we cannot bring the maize seeds from India to Sri Lanka because of one disease. But we have Sri Lankan point of view, we have to see the possibilities of getting those seeds rather than producing in Sri Lanka with more money investment, because we can get the advantage of the region as a family. Then these things we have to look into seriously, then harmonize ourselves in the region rather than going to the away from the region. Then we can get the more benefit as a family for the region, and also with the adequate amount of safety. Then we can see a better region in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Teixeira. Ms. Farzana, you touched on some very important points, and you were at the forefront of government policy making to make Pakistan climate resilient. You spoke about temperature, you spoke about policy making. Just wanted to get your views on what can the government do better in terms of environmental protection policy making that will allow for Pakistani farmers and Pakistan overall generally, with the challenges that we have, and we're on one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. How can policy making at a federal level mitigate those risks?
Thank you, Bukhari. First of all, what I feel we need to understand what is the difference between the environmental policy and climate change policies. Because as an environmentalist, I always advocate that climate change is a phenomena which is happening as a result of the environmental damages in any country. So when we understand and we integrate the right approach into our environmental policies, ultimately we will be able to address the impacts of the climate change. So, so far we have the oldest law in Pakistan about the environment, that was a ordinance of 1983, then Act of 1997. And then after 2011, every province is having, if I talk at national level, they are having the environmental laws. But unfortunately, realizing this, there are certain other international agreements and protocols which are addressing such type of issues. And as a consequence of those agreements where Pakistan is a party, we need to evolve more laws and policies and regulation. First of all, I heard a good news few days back. So far, we don't have a climate change agriculture policy. Our agriculture policy on the climate resilient crops. This is very important issue in the country. Like when we are going to adopt any type of the climate resilient approach in the agriculture sector, we need to have a clear policy and then guidelines in every sector. And so far, when I talk with the people and they say we are climate change activists, I don't find anyone agriculture activist in context of the climate change. Usually, in the present scenario, when we talk about the climate resilient agriculture, I think this is one of our production, our industry. I will talk agriculture as an industry, because any industry needs a lot of raw material and impacts negatively on so many other environmental aspects like water consumption, waste generation, chemicals, and everything. But agriculture is one of the industry where we give less input and we can get more output. So in that context, when we say climate resilient agriculture, still as a regulator of so many things in this context, I say we should have the strong technology to develop the climate resilient seed. We are talking a lot about the genetically modified organisms, but still we need to target these research and technology, keeping in view our vulnerability in the climate change and environment, and then our so fast happening of the climate disaster in the country. Like in the flood of the 2022, we were expecting that our most of the land, which is cotton growing land, they will be that has been impacted by floods. And maybe it was the fear we will not have the enough production of the cotton, or maybe we will not have enough seed for sowing of the other crops. But luckily, this year we had a good yield. So sometimes having the proper policy approach and then use of this instrument into the translation of the guidelines and the decision making, we can use the adversity into opportunity. If small farmers are the people who are really into this production industry, agriculture, we need to sit with them and we need to understand their need, their requirement. Like mentioned by one of the fellow Dr. Siddiqui sir, about the use of the latest technology. And I'm really disappointed by this thing. Still, we are talking about the use of the latest technology. Last month, I visited Australia, and the most attractive thing in the Australia is agriculture for me. And when I did some research on that, what type of agriculture industry is there producing the latest equipment for the farmers? And with less efforts, less consumption, they are having more production. The mostly machinery was being imported from the Europe. So we need to explore these things instead of reinventing these things. One thing. And second, why I talk agriculture and the climate resilient agriculture, even sometimes when we are talking normal industrial production, you cannot give the exact assessment for any industry, what revenue that industry will generate in the 1 year. But for agriculture sector, if we provide proper technology, proper seed, and other allied facilities to a farmer, I guarantee you within 6 months, we can generate the revenue in this industry. That is one of the factors which really we are not talking about that. And under the Convention on Biodiversity, there is one component, access and benefit sharing. That is area where I will urge to STPI and Shafkat Kaka Khail Sab here, and I will request all such type of scholars and the people. Let's talk about the access and benefit sharing under the CBD. What benefits this country is providing to the multinationals, and what our resources are being accessed by them, and what benefits ultimately we are sharing by the international community. And what input is coming from the international community towards these sources of the benefit. Or unfortunately, we have not done good advocacy, and we have not developed, right? You asked me about the policy. What is our policy on the access and benefit sharing component of the CBD? So this really needs to be focused. And instead of again and again talking what investment is exactly required, what investment should come into the producer in this sector, agriculture, I will say industry. It's no more agriculture just growing food for the local community or the locals, but we need to look into it with the level of the export industry. And I remember one of the very old picture, which was shared by one fellow back in 1971. We had such farmers. They were visiting very frequently USA and sharing their experiences of Pakistan with the farmer of USA. So we don't say we didn't have enough people or expertise in this sector. It is the need to think, are we using those think tanks rightly or not? One thing. Second, I will quote another example. In Jordan, there is a town named Kasbah, and mostly Pakistani farmers are settled over there. And Pakistani farmer introduced agriculture industry in the Jordan, and they grew a lot of agriculture crops and other allied production into Jordan. And today, if you visit the Middle East or any other country, you will find the production of the Jordan over there. So these are the invention or sharing of the experience of the Pakistani farmer, Pakistani producer at the international community. And this is a unique example how our farmer previously have been contributing. Now, when you say about the policy and requirement of the policy in the smart agriculture or more yield in the context of the climate change, then there are 3-4 sectors, and definitely we need a very strong policy addressing two things. One, to address the conventional production, which is already happening, how it can be improved, how it can be addressed when we talk heat tolerant, water resistance, waterlogging. These are the areas, and then we talk about the biotechnology. So these two separate areas should be addressed very clearly in terms of the policy, not only policy. I will share one of the regulation rules. We have national biosafety rules since 2005. And in last 18 years, we have not developed further regulation on this subject. I should admit, instead of pointing out where other are not performing, I, as a regulator and as a part of the policy making system, we should admit where we are lacking these type of the policy. And until and unless we will not realize, understand, and admit, we will not be able to move forward on the policy making.
Thank you, Thank you, madam. I want to open some questions to the floor. If there are any questions, happy to take those. Otherwise, I have a lot of burning questions in my mind. So anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question from one of our panelists? Okay. So Ms. Nazish, I just wanted to touch on something that you had said and something that Dr. Akmal has also spoken about. So what can the private, so I know the private sector has had some successes in terms of Pepsi's done great with the potato crop. Chili's has been a private sector led initiative in this country as well. So what role do you see for the private sector in terms of helping the government or making Pakistan more productive in agricultural produce, keeping in view the challenges that we face today?
So I'd just like to say that the private sector will invest where there's a business case. So if there is a business case in agriculture, which we do see, and we do see investment coming in to Pakistan in agriculture. We've seen it through Friesen Campina, which has come in very recently. There's also talk of, players just even on dairy production in the Middle East coming into investing in agriculture in Pakistan as well. So there is a business case for this. The role that the private sector can play is obviously bringing in the investment but from the other side, there is a need for the government to understand that I feel that the policy should look at, what are the private sector's needs as well. Obviously, they need to make profit, and they will make profit if the farmer makes profit. So that, and then the other thing is there are a lot of gaps in the sense that the main issue with agricultural produce is that most of it's lost on the way to market. So we lose, I think, 40% or more during logistics. So one area, where policy could play a part is getting these warehouses and, places where, foodstuff could be stored before it goes to market. So that would be one area. And I think if there is a policy, the private sector would even invest in that as well. So that's one, but there is a need to be a focus there. The other is the idea that the quality has to be enough that it can be added to make into value-added goods. So we were having a conversation with, I know Pepsi has worked with potatoes, but we were having a conversation with other agribusiness owners a couple of weeks ago on climate-related risks. And they were exploring, or they were trying to get farmers grow better quality of tomatoes. So if, somebody from the private sector or agribusiness owner provides a farmer tomato seeds, we would expect that farmer to use those seeds to grow the tomatoes. But what we see is that farmer would take seeds from other people as well. And at the end, all of that tomato crop will be mixed together. And then the agribusiness person who's approached them would get a mixture which will be of a lower quality, which will not be good for that person to make into value-added ketchup or something, because that person would require now to say that our tomatoes are produced from this type of seeds for exports and all of that. So this sort of thing needs to be addressed by policy as well. So these are two areas that we've talked about. The other is the measuring of inputs and outputs. I know the textile sector has worked on that through Better Cotton Initiative, which is and the main focus there is the measuring what goes into the cotton crop, and obviously the outputs as well, as in the sense that how much wastewater is being discharged from the farms and all of that. So that has become very important now for private sectors to export, where the money could come into for further business investments and all of that. So these are areas. So what I'm trying to say is there's a greater need for transparency in the whole process, and that needs to be sort of ingrained into the farmers through training and development. So that's something that I would feel that's very important.
So Dr. Akmal, to you, and in response to what Ms. Nazish over here is saying in terms of the private sector, and you've spoken about government not investing enough in agriculture and giving examples of the US as well. So what do you think are the three top priorities that the government should have to make Pakistan a productive, adopt technology, and and perhaps work with the private sector? So where do you stand? What are your top three priorities? And what role do you think the private sector can play in making Pakistan agriculturally productive?
Obviously, the bulk of the investment, whether this is in farming or at the agro-processing level along the value chain, this should come from the private sector. And the role of the government always is to work with the private sector and sort out why private sector is not investing. And obviously, the private sector would only invest when there is a business case, because they just want their profit maximizers. And as I have said earlier, when you look at the farming, the consistency of profitability in farming is very important. But now let me expand on farming sector. We have 5 major crops, and not all crops are in the same boat, if you like. For instance, of the 5 major crops, let's say 5, we have wheat, we have cotton, we have sugarcane, then we have maize, and we have, of course, more than maize, we have rice, so 6. So a couple of bright spots are really in 2 crops. One is maize or corn. And that proves the point when farmers have a technology, in this case, seed, hybrid seed, which is very productive and profitable, farmers will adopt that technology. They will find money, they will find seed, they will adopt it. Give you an example. It takes about 15,000 rupees for 1 acre seed of hybrid corn, and farmers find 15,000 rupees, and they grow and are very productive. They average yield is 80 to 90 mounds per acre, which is right up there among top producers. The other bright spot in Pakistan is in the rice crop, part of the rice crop. So we grow 3 types of rice. We grow basmati, we grow Eri varieties, coarse varieties, and then the new breakthrough varieties are these Chinese hybrids. Again, like corn, these Chinese hybrids, we don't eat them here. Full 25% of the rice area in Pakistan is now under Chinese hybrids, and it's very profitable. And that's, again, the productivity, the yield levels are the same as you will find them in China. So what I'm trying to prove is when farmers have access to technology, which is productive and profitable, they adopt those technologies. But that's not the case in wheat, not the case in cotton, not in sugarcane. And that's where the government's role is, to find and fund those technologies for farmer to adopt and prosper. So unless the question is how government can really help the private sector. As I said, private sector would not invest unless they find there is a money to be made. So the advice I have given to the government is that for 2 crops, which are fundamental for our food security, which is wheat, and for our economy, which is cotton. And both of these commodities we have imported over the last 4 years. About $3 billion we spent on wheat, importing wheat in the last 4 years, and about $6 billion importing cotton. I think this was travesty. We should not have, the government should have made plans and give incentives to Pakistani farmers to be self-sufficient in these two commodities, and we would have saved $10 billion importing these commodities over the just like 4 or 5 years. So this is a level, an extent of benefit I'm talking about, where little bit of help through policy by setting the profitable support prices. And when I say government should intervene and provide policies, you haven't heard me mention the S word, the subsidy. I don't believe Pakistani farmers or our sector require subsidy. What Pakistani farmers require is the public investments in public goods, in better seeds, better technologies. And once governments invest in these areas, the return, just $10 billion we spent importing just 2 varieties, government would have spent just few $1 million and would have saved the $10 billion we spent on import of these 2 commodities alone. Same, I can go on and on, horticulture crops and oil seeds. So the point I'm making is, it comes down to the government's focused attention on the policy and modest investments. I know Pakistan is struggling with the fiscal crisis. Government doesn't have too much space to invest, but these investments are not large, but mostly actions through policy can really put us on an even keel. So I fully agree that this is government's role to work with the private sector and see how we can entice them into investments, not only in farming, but also in processing value chains, where we really lack, especially in agro-processing. Our cold chain is significantly underdeveloped. 40% of our fruits and vegetables are wasted, even after all this struggle farmers make to produce fruits and vegetables. 40% are wasted because we don't have the cold chain, and it's only private sector who would invest in it. When I say 40%, well, the real loss is about 30%, because 5 to 10% is lost even in developed countries. So our net loss is about 30%. And I did back of the envelope calculation, which is now dated 2-3 years ago. This is worth about $1 billion. So I can count all those billions of dollars of losses all day long. But the point is, this really is the responsibility of the government, and I'm part of the government. And this is the third government I'm dealing with. And I'll be very frank with you that making the policy, then getting it through the system and taking it out on the field is a struggle.
Just so there's a few questions that have come online, and one is particularly related to you. So very quickly, if you can just shed light on the transformative plan that the Ministry of Food had, and the transformation plan of the Ministry of Food. Is it on track? Where are we with it?
Let me put it this way. Pakistan is one country where there is no dearth of any plans, policies, and strategies. The issue is they don't get implemented.
Thank you. I think that answers it. So Dr. Farzana, there's a question online which I think relates to you and goes very nicely from what, and Dr. Tushara, we're going to skip you for this and I'll come back to you. And this goes very nicely into your area of expertise. And the question online is that, what incentive is there for the local private sector to produce GM in wheat? And Dr. Akmal spoke about wheat and other things, and we've had many conversations around GM oilseeds as well. So your reply to the private sector's incentive to produce GM in wheat, and from my side, is there a need for GM in Pakistan? So I know that there was a huge conversation around producing GM wheat a couple of years ago, and eventually it was stopped because there was no inherent advantage that Pakistan had in moving towards GM corn. So your views on this?
Thank you so much for such an important issue. The first part of your question regarding the again, involvement of the private sector into development of the GM technology or biotechnology. And taking benefit of this forum, I would like to share so far what development in this sector, again, as a regulator of the GM technology and production of the GMO, I would like to share. We have the Pakistan Biosafety Guidelines 2005, and then we have the Pakistan Biosafety Rules 2005. And the Ministry of Climate Change under Cartagena Protocol and Pakistan Environmental Protection Agency is implementing these rules and the guidelines since 2005. And still, I will not claim we have very strong setup at administrative level, but at the same time, if we say so far, in the country, altogether, 53 organizations or institutes are working on the development of the GM technology in any crop, including maize. Because our approach towards this GM technology is that every institute or every organization, either private or public, we don't differentiate. Only we encourage their capabilities to have the perfect research work at lab level. And I will share mostly our academia and research institute and agriculture universities are coming forward in this sector. And we have this policy at the National Biosafety Committee level and Technical Advisory Committee level that we will not refuse without any logical or policy intervention any research work at lab level. So this is one thing very clear. It's a private sector and public sector, and this sector is very much open for the private to establish the collaboration with the public sector research institute to come forward, make investment with them, and to have the good research work in this field of the GMO development. Second, I will also share so far, if our public and private sector competition we talk in the commercialization of their production. Because after lab work, there are certain other steps which require some environmental risk and biosafety. But end product is a commercialization of those GM products. For that, in Pakistan, we have at the moment 100% BT cotton. I will quote one of the example, and Siddiqui Sir was saying, just to deviate from my question little bit, for this, we need to identify or we need to regulate the land use for the crops. One of the scientists few days back shared with me, in those areas where we were growing cotton, now we are growing sugar. तो उन्होंने कहा cotton को sugar हो गई है. So this is one thing very important, sir, because sugar has different demands of the water and cotton has different. तो थोड़ी देर हम काफी बैठे सोचते रहे कि वाकई cotton को sugar हुई है, हमारी एक major product थी. So this is one of the component where we talk about where we are growing. Do we have enough land to grow the GM crops, which we are developing after minimum one crop needs 7 to 9 years of the commercialization. So much research work is required and to come up with the required results. Because mostly at lab level, our research is not getting the desired results. So after 7 or 9 years, when a commodity is coming for the commercialization, do we have the land available for the cultivation of that crop? This is one of the very alarming for the private sector, because is private sector ready to invest over there when research has been done for 7 years and then they don't find the place to grow that crop? Secondly, definitely, government can play a role of the catalyst between the public and private sector. When I say here public sector, doesn't mean the government as a regulator. It means the public sector research institutes, the academia. I can give several examples without naming. They are doing a lot of research work, but their research is not being utilized by the private sector. So I will urge here to encourage the private sector to have the collaboration from the day first. there are so many other areas from where we look into the investment opportunity. What are the possibilities to invest in any country? Similarly, in Pakistan, there is a lot of opportunity for the private sector to invest in GM technology, to have proper research facility within the country. So all the questions which are not being answered at the moment, in the future, we can answer those questions, that we have good collaboration. And here, we are not to discourage the investment of any sector, either public or private, because I mentioned in my earlier turn that agriculture is a sector where you can get the production within 6 months, but research for the agriculture takes year, and to get the desired results, that takes a year. We should not waste those years. So this is my prime concern about the promotion of the biotechnology in the country.
Thank you, Dr. Farzana. Thank you, Dr. Farzana. There's a question by our colleague over here, G. Shahzad Sam.
My name is Shahzad. From agri-livestock aquaculture. So I have a combination where I have a agri-business degree in the veterinary sciences, and then I did my PhD in environmental sciences. So keeping that thing in view, understanding. So I was just wondering, do we have an agriculture mapping for Pakistan? Because we believe database and data integration is one of the key points to move towards the climate smart farming system, because that includes agriculture and primarily the livestock, aquaculture and poultry in that case. This is something, an open question, so anyone can answer that. So I prefer, ma'am, if you can give the answer.
As far as mapping of the agriculture is concerned, that is not my domain of working. I think Siddiqui sab can answer about that, but I second you, and I can share with you, this is one of my plan or working desire to understand where we are growing the GM crops, and we should have the mapping of that. That is really important. So how much land is being used for this purpose? What are the climate challenges over there? What are the approaches over there? And where we need to go for more biotechnology developed seeds or the crops in context of the climate resilience for those lands. So really, GM agriculture mapping is required in the country. And we need to especially, I will say, those land in Pakistan, which is called wasted land, that needs to bring under cultivation using the regime of the biotechnology. And that is really being ignored. And farmer or small farmer or our investor are not going into those areas. We have a lot of the land, especially we have the potential of the growing of the medicinal crops. If I talk the aloe vera, one of the very important medicinal plant, and we are not growing. Then we are not growing soybean at all in the country. So are we developing our lands? And we need to do mapping of that type of land, which has the potential to be used as an agriculture land. And one more thing, not only this, one area which we were ignoring, livestock is very much part of the agriculture. And even human can survive on the burgers and other Kentucky fried things, but animal cannot. So they are very much integrated part of the agriculture, and we should think about them as well.
Dr. Akmal, very quickly, if you can respond, please.
I think what I understood from the question was whether we have mapped the country to do the climate smart agriculture planning, right? Look, we have mapped the country for a long time to come up what we call agroecological zones. There are 8 agroecological zones in Pakistan. So we have mapped that for now 15, 20 years already. But what you are talking about is further refining the zones and come up with the advice for farmers, what exactly to grow in those areas. So I think this is, I will be very frank with you. I think if you make a list of 10 actions, 1 to 10, what farmers and the government should do to fight the climate change or come up with a climate smart agriculture, this level of intervention would be maybe number 6 or 7 on my list. as I said, there are low-hanging fruits that the government has to really adopt. I shared with you the technologies; those are simpler technologies. The new varieties; those would be my focus, and those would be number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is a more finesse sort of approach. This will come along down the road. Thank you.
So Dr. Teixeira, just want to come back to you before we conclude. So what are the top 3 challenges do you see in the future looking at climate change in terms of the pest, or how will plant virology change over the course as we see new challenges emerging due to climate? So, and what would be your remedies to mitigate those?
Yeah, thank you. Starting from this gentleman question, actually that is the topmost issue in the region, because even today Sri Lanka doesn't have the complete data set, real-time data set. Even we have the agroecological zone, then we have a crop suitability, then monitoring evaluation is the nil at the field level. Because without monitoring evaluation, how we can go further? Because there are many projects implemented in the field, but projects which always over. But after that, impact assessments, monitoring evaluation during the implementation are very poor. That is one of the major challenge, because we are pumping huge money on the climate, this scenario, but we have to see what is the impact over the small farmer. That is very weak. That is one way why we cannot do this one, because we don't have a concrete data sets over the village level, grassroots level. Then even today, we cannot get the correct answer of hectare of paddy in Sri Lanka at this level. But I think across the region, similar situation. That is one major drawback why we cannot go ahead. Second is because we have isolated techniques. We have a pest control, disease control, fertilizer. We have to pick everything into put into the one integrated management. This one that has to go to the farmer, because our extension officers are trying to the feed with farmers with many technologies here and there, but it is not going as integrated one. The combining with this kind of the climate resilience, the approaches also, because if somebody will come with the climate resilient project, that is our package. Then somebody come with the fertilizer project, this is our package. Then it should not be like this. We should have the talk within ourselves, and we should go to the farmer with the integrated package. Then only farmer will get confident on the package. It has to be proven, because most of our projects are piloting. Then it is not going to the next farmer after 5 years also. But they are in neighbors. But this farmer is adapting the piloting of the project, but next farmer doesn't know anything. But it has to be changed, because projects, whenever we are formulating projects, we should see the sustainability of the other farmers in the region. That is one of the major drawback in most of our projects, because they are targeting only for the piloting. Then after that project is over, but another 2 seasons, this piloting farmer also don't want to make it. Then again, farmer is in the same level. That is the regional perspective. Thank you.
We're running out of time. So just very quickly, I'm going to start with Ms. Nazish over here and just move across the hall before I give the floor to my colleague, Mr. Shakib. So Ms. Nazish, in 30 seconds, very quickly, your takeaways, the message you want to leave for the audience.
So I'd just like to add one thing that is very important to the entire discussion, and that is data, as pointed out by one of the participants. We do need lots of data. Obviously, one is the agricultural mapping. The other is obviously climate-related risk mapping. And that's that basically will identify the risks and the opportunities. And until we do a very comprehensive mapping of Pakistan and what are the risks right now, what are the risks in the next 5 years, and then through scenario mapping, what are the risks in the next 10 to 15 years. It's only then we can plan, 9 years down the road or 10 years down the road if we want to get in new crops and things like that. So at the end, the starting point will be the data, and that's where I think my stance would be and my organization's stance would be as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Akmal, rapidly.
I think as I said, Pakistan is not ready for our agriculture is not climate change ready. But there are opportunities where we can invest in the short term, and we can be ready to some extent to mitigate some of the losses. But this is going to be a challenge. We also believe that the variety developments, which is in the pipeline, hopefully they will come online in the next few years. We may get ready. See, we haven't really discussed the 1.5 degrees Celsius, which we think is a reality. And if that happens in 8 to 10, 12, 15 years down the road, we will really be in big trouble. So I think our focus should really be coming up with technologies, varieties, practices to ensure that food security in Pakistan is properly taken care of.
Thank you. Dr. Tushara, very quickly from your side.
Yeah, actually, this has to be taken as the region first, because we have more difficulties in the region. Even we cannot exchange seed among ourselves. Therefore, we have to have a harmonized policy regulation within us. Then it has to implement it, not just like a volunteer one. It has to come through the policy interventions as well as the regulatory intervention. Then only we can take forward this type of things with the small level of farmers. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Farzana.
Time question or what I feel everybody sitting under this roof should take back. Land use change in Pakistan, what is happening. And not only cotton ko sugar hui hui hai, balki hamari agriculture ko construction hui hui hai. This is one of the major challenge. Just so rapidly, our construction industry and housing industry is changing our agriculture land, and we have very good example. And then what has been said, my fellow from Sri Lanka, really, do we have any forum at the regional level to talk about the regional climate changes and what is happening in the agriculture sector? Again, seed is not my domain exactly, but GMO seed is my domain. And we don't have any regional forum where we can sit together and can talk about the GMO seed, what is happening in my neighboring country, what is happening in my front door neighbors, and how they are dealing with this subject in the context of the climate change. Like we have very strong forum of the Malé Declaration on Transboundary Air Quality Movement, where Sri Lanka is member, Pakistan is member, and including 8 SAARC countries, Afghanistan and Iran is also member, and even Maldives. So for this, I feel when we are talking on the regional context, listening my fellow, we need to learn from their experiences. And second, really, we need to address in our policy about the land use control. If we will not do the land use control, I assure you, we will importing every food commodity. We will be importing. We will be not there to talk anymore. Pakistan was an agriculture country. At the moment, we cannot say Pakistan is an agriculture country or not. Keeping in view our export commodities and especially our production capacity. So we need to address all together private, public sector, academia, policymaker, research institutes, please talk about land use for agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. If I can invite Mr. Shakib Ilahi from USEC to give his concluding remarks, please. Sure.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us to this forum and allowing us to speak on behalf of US Soybean Export Council. Let me start by saying that, listening to you all today, there is light at the end of the tunnel. As during the debate, we saw that the issues have been identified and solutions suggested as Pakistan addresses its challenges in agriculture. Now, speaking for the US Soybean Export Council, the critical role of climate-smart food system in fostering sustainability, optimizing supply chains, and enhancing consumer welfare. As we navigate the intersection of agriculture and climate consciousness, our commitment remains steadfast in promoting innovative solutions that benefit both the environment and stakeholders. Together, we can cultivate resilient and eco-friendly future for global food systems, with soybeans at the forefront of sustainable agriculture. As we delve into the intricate web of agriculture and climate considerations, USEC remains resolute in its commitment to championing innovative solutions. We firmly believe that by embracing climate-smart food systems, we not only mitigate environmental impact that also paves the way for a more resilient and eco-friendly future. Our dedication to sustainable agriculture extends beyond beyond mere commitment. It's a collaborative effort that involves stakeholders across the globe. By fostering partnerships and sharing best practices, we can collectively shape a food ecosystem that is not only robust, but also environmentally friendly, conscious. The optimization of supply chains is a critical aspect of this endeavor. Through the integration of advanced technologies and streamlined processes, we aim to create supply chains that are not only efficient, but also reduce carbon footprint. This in turn contributes to the overall goal of building a more sustainable and climate resilient food systems. At the core of our mission is the well-being of the consumer. By prioritizing sustainability, we ensure the food on their plates is not only nutritious, but also ethically sourced. Climate-smart food systems empower consumers to make choices that align with their values, fostering a sense of responsibility towards the environment. Soybeans being a versatile and nutrient-rich crop, play a central role in our vision of sustainable agriculture. USEC envisions a future where soybeans serve as a catalyst for change, contributing to resilient and adaptable food systems that can withstand the challenges posed by a changing climate. As we navigate the complex landscape of agriculture and environmental stewardship, soybeans emerge as a key player in sustainable practices. The versatility and nutritional value of soybeans make them a cornerstone of building a resilient food system that can withstand the challenges posed by a changing climate. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, USEC urges a collective effort towards embracing climate-smart food systems. By doing so, we not only safeguard the future of agriculture, but also contribute to a healthier planet and improve well-being for consumers worldwide. Together, let's sow the seeds of sustainability for a bountiful and environmentally conscious tomorrow. I invite you all to review our website and at usec.org or ussoy.org. For more details about all that we are doing in terms of bringing tangibility to whatever that we are trying to advocate on sustainability in the agricultural space. Please do review it. We put out certifications to our product, which is the way where we promote practices of continued labeling of whatever it is that we produce. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, we conclude this session on sustainable development and climate smart food systems. I hope that the audience can take away some important learnings from our distinguished panelists. So thank you. And the next session is at 12:30 on agriculture at the Crystal Ballroom. Thank you.